Hey gang, check it out. Austin Music Foundation is excited to share the first 5 songs from year 4 of our Artist Development Program, available exclusively on Bandcamp. 5 brand new original singles from DZ Brown, Aubrey Hayes, Drint, Pelvis Wrestling, and Stone Wheels. Your $5 donation will help Austin Music Foundation continue leading the way in producing innovative, career-advancing programs, including the Artist Development Program. Every dollar over the suggested donation will go directly to these worthy artists. Check it out today at austinmusicfoundation.bandcamp.com. That's austinmusicfoundation.bandcamp.com. Get involved.
Like Jesus, rap a line, wrote the Bible here. Candy coat parade, get your wisdom teeth fired here.
Attention aspiring musicians of all levels from all over the world. Want to learn to play guitar or bass like your heroes? Well, I have the guy for you. Multi-instrumentalist Cory Glaeser has played with Fastball, Paula Nelson, Skyrocket, me, and many more. In fact, his song Needle Hits the Groove is our theme song. Cory's been teaching for over 2 decades and is now offering his services all over the world via Zoom. So if you want to learn rock, country, R&B, or funk, folk, or jazz on guitar or bass, just go to CoryGlaeser.com or follow the link in the text of this podcast and start shredding on guitar or slapping the bass like a pro with Cory Glaeser at CoryGlaeser.com. Let's get down.
And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here?
It's time for How Did I Get Here? And now here is your host, Mobley.
When we talked all night.
All right. Hello, I'm Johnny. I'm your host. Welcome to the show. I hope that all your life is getting back to normal. I hope your pipes didn't bust, and if they did, you're getting all that fixed. This has been a trying time, hasn't it? It's a tough time. I know there's still people without water, and I want to say what I did on the last show. You can DM me at How Did I Get Here Facebook page, or on Instagram, I'm at Johnny Gowdy, and on Twitter, I'm at Johnny Gowdy. DM me if you're in the Austin area, you want to come take a shower, take some water. My boiling ban is over, so just bring some stuff because I'm out of containers. So bring containers to my house, take a shower, do what you need to do, and take some water with you. All right? I hope you guys are doing okay. Seriously, like this has been a weird. Just when you didn't think things could get weirder, they keep getting weirder, and weirder, and weirder, and freakier, and literally more apocalyptic at this point. Right? You're sitting here at your house, and you're like, "What in the hell is going? What the hell is going on?" And then like this week, it's like it's going to be 80 degrees today on Tuesday when I'm doing this intro. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. We got to band together, help out your neighbors, check on your neighbors. That was one thing that was fantastic during this whole thing was the neighborly thing that came out was very beautiful. People live in a community and they treated it as such, they looked out for each other. They looked out for their friends, their neighbors that they'd never met. My next door neighbor had a Coleman stove when all the power went out on Monday. It was freezing cold. And people were freezing. It was like 9 degrees that morning. And we all didn't have power. And she sent me a text and said, "Hey, we're busting out the Coleman stove. Do you want some hot water for tea or something?" And I was like, "Yes." And so then we had to figure out who this one older lady was to see if we could get her some tea. And she figured it out, got her some tea. But just, people reaching out to each other. People people you don't know. Like, "Hey, are you cold? You want some warm water? To have some tea?" I know it's not much. But when you're fucking freezing and your lights are all out because you live in a state where people follow their greed and not their fucking hearts and minds, it gets tough. But it's good. It's good that we were there for each other. So kudos to that. I hope you guys stay strong, and I hope the rest of the week just keeps getting better for everyone. Gang, I have a great show for you guys today. The amazingly talented Mobley is on the show. He just released a brand new EP called Young and Dying in the Occident Supreme last Friday. This show was supposed to drop last Wednesday, but I had to move everything a week. Obviously, whatever. We know what happened. Anyway, this EP, Young and Dying in the Occident Supreme, absolutely fantastic. You guys have heard James Crow and a couple of the other tunes on here. You know that he did Foster the People did a mix of James Crow. That's absolutely fantastic. There's videos that he's been making. He has been so creative, Mobley, during this quarantine. He went around at one point and played shows for fans in their front yard. He would pull up in his van and jam out right there. Now he's about to do a virtual tour. It's called the Devil in Your Daydream Virtual Tour. It's a series of 9 virtual shows, some performed moving through natural and urban spaces, and each will be captured on a cinematic scope. He'll be doing shows that will be benefiting Dawa and the venues that he will be representing for each of the 9 shows. Even the Troubadour in Los Angeles. He's going to be doing it in Chicago, the 930 Club in D.C., Bowery Ballroom in New York City, Masquerade in Atlanta, White Oak Music Hall in Houston. Anyway, fantastic. These shows are $5 tickets. There's a $25 merch bundle, and you can pay what you can. Mobley is an incredibly creative and super thoughtful artist. He's always thinking about his community as well. And he's done so much during this pandemic for others by spreading the word, by raising money for different organizations that are there to help people. So Mobley and I have a great conversation. We've talked before a couple of times, and I've always enjoyed it. I think he's really like one of the most talented and driven artists that we have here in Austin, and I'm grateful to get to sit down and talk to him every time I do. So without further ado, please enjoy me and my friend Mobley chatting it up right here on How Did I Get Here? Let's get down.
I've been seeing the world through a dead man's eyes. And when I laid me down, I did not rise. But then I noticed that I've been watching myself from a car outside. And so to bring me round, it took me down a long dark ride. That's where I find it at. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now.
It's good to see your face. I like those hats.
Likewise, man.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
Hey, real quick, you play an SG and you got a new case for it. What is that case company?
Colton cases?
Colton Cases. And they're here, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I went and looked at their stuff today. I was like, shit, man. I love those cases, man.
Really nice.
Yeah.
They're really nice, yeah.
Now, did they make them custom to your guitar?
Yeah, I had to send like a bunch of pictures and measurements to them.
Oh, really?
And because I've modded it a little bit, so it's not exactly the same dimensions as normal, but yeah.
Right.
They custom made it. It's really sweet.
Before we get going, you like SGs? My friend built me this guitar.
I saw.
Yeah?
I saw it on your
Badass,
socials.
man.
It looks awesome, man.
It's killer. All right. So before we get into this record, Young and Dying in the Occident Supreme, the EP is fantastic. You released a couple of singles last year, and you had one of the songs, Nobody's Favorite. You had remixed by Foster the People.
Yeah.
How did that connection happen?
Mutual friends. So one of the guys in the band is kind of holed up in Texas over the pandemic, and we had mutual friends, and they made the introduction, sent them the song, asked if they'd be interested, and they liked it and ran with it. So, yeah,
That's pretty cool, man.
yeah.
You've done a lot during this pandemic. Like there's been a lot you've done both socially, musically, and also performance-wise. I remember at one point seeing you going around last summer and playing. Was it in the summer you were going and playing out of your van?
Yeah.
How did you?
Yeah, we had.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Go ahead.
No. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was. I think it was late summer, maybe early fall. I can't remember, but
I can't either.
it all blurs together.
Yeah.
But a big part of my artistic world is performance, and the biggest part of my performances is definitely interacting with audiences. So this period of time where I haven't really been able to do that in a physical way has been really tough and tricky. And I'm absolutely like in for the long haul in terms of refraining from playing shows until it's safe again. But I wanted to find a way to try to still be able to connect with people. And so I did a contest where, fans, listeners, they took various actions to get entries, and then we just raffled and drew people's names, and then drove around with my van and my dog and a guitar and played these little concerts from people's curbsides. And it was a good way to like get that, person to person real interaction without incurring any of the dangers of like gathering a real crowd of people. And yeah, I think it meant a lot to people at that point. We had been in the Austin area. We had just come out of like the complete lockdown phase. And so, yeah, it was really cool getting to see people face to face, still, 20, 30 feet away. So really safe, but actually being able to be in space with people and share the music that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are you going to you're doing a Devil in Your Daydream virtual tour, and you're doing 9 virtual shows, and they're all these like cities and venues. Are you going to these venues and live streaming from them, or?
No. So I am shooting all of those shows in the Austin area.
Okay.
So the idea is we're partnering with these venues that, we would have been playing or trying to play.
Right.
Under normal circumstances on a tour, but the actual shows are taking place in really cool locations around the Austin area. So one show is going to be in the Central Library, one will be on the roof of the Line Hotel, one will be out at Circuit of the Americas, one will be at like the new Austin FC Stadium, out in the woods in Driftwood. So just really cool locations to give people, from around the country and around the world a tour of this area while I virtually tour, these venues around the country.
That's awesome, man. And there's some really like legendary places. You're doing like 930. You're helping out the Troubadour. And so the proceeds from this go to the Dawa Fund and the venues, like each show. Yeah. The proceeds from that will go to each venue.
Right.
Man, that is amazing. Now, will there be audiences at these shows? Will there be a few people there, or just the people filming it?
No, the audiences will be completely virtual. The shows themselves, I really approached it. We were shooting 9 30-minute shows, so it's really like making 3 feature films. So I really approached it in a cinematic way. We've got a drone flying around and just really gorgeous footage of all these different locations. And then on the night that these take place, I'll be in the chat watching the show along with everybody else, interacting with people while they watch these concerts that we've prepared for each city.
Fuck, man, that is so cool. You're such a creative. You're just you're amazing.
Thank you very much.
You really are. I'm always blown away, like with every time we talk, like you're doing so much more than most people. And there's this Bowie-ness and Prince-ness to you. You know what I mean? Where you're like this self-contained guy. And obviously you're doing these shows by yourself. That's how you perform. Did you do one of those Love and Light stream shows?
I didn't. I didn't.
Did you happen to go to one of them or anything?
I didn't go to any, but I did stream a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went to one and it was really well done.
Yeah.
Like I felt safe there,
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to one outside show. And it felt freaky even though it was outside and people were in their areas. There's like, people coming up like, can I sit at your table? And you're like, you fucking kidding me? It's a pandemic. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Wow.
That was my foray into, is this going to be cool? And I was like, I don't think it's for me,
Yeah, that's how I feel too, man. I've just out of an abundance of caution, I haven't played for an audience since February of last year. And I just can't. It's been tough, obviously. Like I make my living playing shows. Like that's where the money comes from in terms of being a professional musician for me. So it's been really tough in that way, but I just can't bear the idea of me gathering people and then like the possibility that somebody dies as a result of that is just, it's too much for me. I can't do that.
Yeah. Did you go to any of the protests in the summer, or you stayed home?
I did go to some of the protests. That felt like, there was a lot of talk about that this summer from, I think people were kind of disingenuous, but to me that felt like we have a window here where this other deadly thing, that is plaguing people's lives and has plagued people's lives for centuries at this point. We have a potential window to mitigate that and potentially save some lives. And I will say, as weird as it felt to be among other people, at the protests that I was at, everybody was wearing masks. Everybody was being really conscientious because like, it's just a group, like it's a self-selecting group of people who cares about other people's lives,
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are the you can see the differences just in footage in one of those and maybe a Trump rally or something that was going on around the time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a heavy time this summer. And I felt like there was, even for myself, I learned a lot, and I felt like I woke up to a lot of things like, oh yeah, this is happening underneath everything we do. And if you go through life choosing not to see it as a white dude, there you go. Like you don't have to see anything or be a part. You only have to see what you see on the news. And what I thought was in the protests that came before, they lasted a short time. This one seemed to have more gravity to it, more weight, and I think because of the situation of everybody being home, people were able to prolong that movement. But do you think that it stuck in some way, or do you feel like that was something people did last summer?
Yeah, I think the history of social change in this country, but for humanity more broadly, strongly, if you pay attention to the history of it, you're strongly discouraged to try to point to any singular cause of change. Like the reality that history bears out is that it's just millions and millions of little decisions and little actions that collectively produce a change. And so, people have been protesting this stuff for lifetimes, obviously, but even just the most recent iteration, it's been 5, 6, 7 years that people have been out in the streets protesting this stuff regularly. And without the groundwork that was laid by all that, this summer couldn't have happened because people wouldn't have been ready. Right. It would have caught people flat-footed, but the people who had already been out there, the people who had already been thinking and talking about this stuff and working on it, were ready. And that's why the mobilization was able to happen. That's why so many people had such clarity about what the stakes were, what the approaches could be, what potential solutions were. It was because people had spent, years, decades, centuries like learning from each other, working on organizing, thinking through these ideas, and laying an organizational and an intellectual groundwork for all the people who discovered it this summer. So, so to the point of your question, will it stick or was it kind of a flash in the pan? I think the answer is kind of yes. I think there are people for whom it was probably a flash in the pan, or
right.
like there was just that particular alchemy of circumstances. They really hated the president. They had a lot of time. They were disaffected because of the poor government response to the pandemic, all these things. But then there are other people who either had been out there and are going to continue to be out there, or who were genuinely moved by what happened in the streets this summer, and who are now incorporating this stuff into their lives. So I say all that to say, the way we get taught history in this country is it's a series of decisions by a few great men, but the way the history actually plays out is a series of small decisions by anonymous people. So I can't discount how important this last summer might end up being in the history of, this struggle.
Right. As far as like being able to view the country, you wrote this record in Thailand. When did you take that trip?
It was the end of 2018. Okay. I had some dates in Australia, and after the dates were finished, it was just kind of like I needed a break. It had been years since I'd really had a break, and I also knew I probably wouldn't be able to afford to get back out there again anytime soon. So it was like, well, while I'm in the neighborhood, I might as well look around. So we popped over to Thailand and stayed there for a few weeks. And the plan was to just relax. I didn't even bring any instruments or anything. But like the day after we landed, I was walking around and saw this knockoff Telecaster in a shop window, and went in, and it was like $50 or something. So I was like, okay, I have to grab it, and I'll fool around with it and give it away before I leave. But then we got to where we were ultimately going, which was this island, remote island in the south, and all these songs started coming out of the guitar. And before I knew it, I had basically tracked all the guitar for the record. And then I came back to the US and finished it here.
Yeah. So what was it that what was it about being there and seeing our country and culture from that angle that was inspiring?
I think it was a few different things. I think probably the most important thing is just the way that things were and are talked about here is mediated through all of the kind of political and economic entanglements that people have. So you don't want to offend these people because they buy whatever, and you're trying to sell it. You don't want to. There's a really powerful impulse in this country to always try to see both sides of everything, even when there's only one side of a thing. But over there, like the same entanglements just didn't exist. And so, the thing that was in the news in particular at that point in time was the family separations at the southern border. And like the news everywhere I was over there was just like, the United States is committing human rights abuses at its southern border, just matter of fact. Whereas here, there was this whole debate, like, is this right? Is this wrong?
Right,
it's like, it's obviously wrong. Yeah. Like, this is obviously wrong. You ask a child, like, is it okay to just take somebody's kid because they're desperate?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that having that clarity, and then, I grew up abroad. I didn't really live in the United States until middle school, and so leaving again for kind of a relatively extended period of time kind of put me back in that frame of mind of someone who is both from here and not from here. Like I kind of know what it feels like to look at the United States as a somewhere else, and not the center of everything. And so I think that, and then also just the really mundane aspect of not being able to speak the language. So just having to listen a lot, and not being surrounded by the things that kind of bog me down, the drudgery of everyday life. Like I didn't have to take out my trash at my house. I didn't have to mow the lawn, like all those things that like, that eat up so much of your time. I didn't have to worry about those things. So, I think it was a combination of those factors.
That's amazing, man. What a fortuitous trip. What was it like, real quick before we move on? How was your trip to Australia?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had been once before, but not to play music. And it was really fun. I got to play at the Sydney Opera House, which was wild.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I didn't expect that I would ever play there, and so that was really fun. And then just hopping around a little bit. We were in Sydney and Melbourne, and getting to see some of the sites. It was a cool experience.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, back to the guitar and the album. You cut the guitar tracks and then you came back here. So the guitar really informed the record and the
it's definitely a guitar record. Yeah. It's basically, the sounds of the record are basically kind of a cataloging of like my favorite eras or sounds of guitar music. So there's like, some psych influence stuff, psych pop, psych rock. There's like some like post-punk dance rock type stuff. There's some funk influence rock stuff. There's some like post new wave stuff. But yeah, every single one of the songs is really centered around a guitar part, which is at this point unusual for me. I usually make my records. I'm sitting in my living room, which is actually just my studio.
Right.
And I usually kind of have all the tools at my disposal. So I don't really write on just one thing, but I was so restricted that it just became a guitar record. Yeah.
But to me, you reach for so many things, because there's in Nobody's Favorite, I think there's that whatever plays the little melodic musical melody, what would be called a solo, is like a real weird kind of like almost within the last decade throwback from like the EDM sounds. You know what I'm talking about? And to me, your music feels informed by all of that, because there is that sort of like 60s vibe of like Jim Crow, that it does have like a, a groovy kind of like, I don't know how else to explain it except for groovy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's interesting because all of those, I feel like all of the music, I guess, that you take in, all of the influences that are around you come into play without any kind of prejudice. Like, oh, I'm not going to use this, or you know what I mean? Or I'm not going to use guitar because I'm a guy that makes music on other instruments now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that it keeps you inspired going from thing to thing?
Yeah, I think...
Because you're producing the track basically as you're writing it and recording it. Like you're kind of doing everything at once.
Yeah. I don't really make demos. Right. So like the track that you hear was me writing the song. So a lot of those guitars are the $50 guitar on there. Oh yeah, almost all of them. Almost all of them are just this $50 guitar run like straight into a laptop, which is wild. And you didn't bring the guitar back. You gave it to somebody there, right? Yeah. We had kind of befriended this taxi driver because the island was a little too big to walk around, so we basically took taxis every day. And this one driver was the one we almost always got, and he was like real rocker guy. He had like the spiked wristband and like green hair and all that stuff, and was always listening to rock music. So at the end, on the last day when we were leaving, like I kind of fumblingly, neither of us really spoke each other's language well enough to have a real conversation, but we could kind of fumble through it. And so I was able to ask, do you want this guitar? And he seemed really excited to get it. So hopefully he's gotten some songs out of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Was he did he wear any t-shirts of bands or anything? Because it's interesting sometimes the global reach of music, and you going to Australia and doing this kind of travel. When I was watching The Weeknd last night, I was thinking to myself, I wonder of the people that I know, because I watched the Super Bowl with two other people in my friend's backyard. We're all musicians, but we're all like rock band guys that are over 45, right? So there is a thing when I'm watching The Weeknd where I'm like, I think this is incredible and so adventurous or anything, but like that guy seems like he has a different job than me. Do you see yourself as somebody that could do something? Because it takes a certain kind of person to like put on that kind of fucking show that costs like almost $20 million to produce a 15-minute thing or 20-minute thing or whatever. Do you see yourself as someone, because you direct your own videos, you push yourself artistically in this, do you see yourself being able to work on a grand scale like that?
Yeah, I think there are definitely, I identify with what you're saying in terms of like, this person has a different job from me. Like, for example, when I see Beyonce stuff, it feels like that. It's like this person, like we're both musicians and we're both performers, but like this is a different art form. Right. I definitely am interested in the kinds of artistic possibilities that get opened up at scale. I think if you're not a musician or performer, you don't realize that the kind of show you can put on for 10 people is just different from the kind of show you can put on for 1,000 people, is different from the kind of show you can put on for 10,000 people, is different from the kind of show you can put on for 1 million people. Like scale just changes the nature of the performance.
Right.
But I wouldn't say that I necessarily aspire to it in any straightforward way, but I am interested in it as a challenge, because I do love spectacle, and I do love I do love bringing an element of theatricality to performing music. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could spend that much money on it, but I'm definitely interested.
Did you watch it?
I've only seen snippets of it. Okay. I wasn't near any screens yesterday, so I didn't even know the Super Bowl had happened until it was over.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a spectacle. I read today that he ended up putting up like $7 million of his own money into it.
Wow.
And I realized
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was incredible. And you think to yourself, because there was a point like 10 or 11 years ago when it was like Bruce Springsteen doing that, and it was just him doing his thing. And the big thing was he slid on his knees at one point, right? Like, I don't know if you remember that, but that was like, whoa! Did you see him slide? And like, the shit that people are doing now is unbelievable. But I always feel like I come from that era where if you're going to be in front of those people, you'll be doing the same thing that you would be doing at like Hotel Vegas, just with, standing further apart or something.
Yeah.
Which is strange. It's strange. I mean, how old are you?
I never tell anybody.
Okay.
I never tell anybody.
Oh, that's interesting. That's cool too. How does it not get out with the internet? That's insane. Okay. So this record, as I said, is, or as I'd mentioned before to you, is really unbelievable. There's another guitar area that you go into, which is like an Ennio in that first song at the end of it.
Yeah.
What is it about that sound that's so appealing? Like, what did he do? Because it really does, like, it kind of massages you in a place that you really want to be massaged,
Yeah, definitely. I think the appeal of that kind of music is not unrelated to the appeal of like punk music or hip hop. And by that, I mean, they're all forms of music that were inspired by limitations and in particular, like financial limitations. Like the reason that Morricone approached like the spaghetti Western scores in the ways that he did was because the films didn't have the budget for the big orchestral scores. So he would pick a couple orchestral instruments and get really cool recordings of those. There might be a trumpet, a small string section or something like that. But then he would incorporate all these other things that were much cheaper and easier to record, like electric guitars, basses, like weird percussion elements and all that. And I think that there's a way, obviously those kind of limitations were important to the development of punk music, important to the development of hip hop. And I think there's a way that like not having enough resources to do the thing that you see other people doing, but still having the same level of ambition. There's a way that those two things put together, just there's this magic that can come out of them. And I think that's a lot of what it is. It's like you're getting these romantic musical gestures that are really influenced by like literally the romantic movement of classical music, but then you're getting these tones and timbres that are really associated with really cool music from like the late 60s through like mid 70s. So it's just a cool marriage. I think it gives people that like swelling romantic feel, but it doesn't veer into that like kind of old sounding territory that you get with, just a straight up symphony orchestra. And so you have these cool elements too. I don't know. I think that's why like people like Tarantino are obsessed with putting it in their films.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because even with that, with less instruments, he's able. I just watched the trilogy like over the summer. The
Fistful of Dollars,
Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and there were points where I was really noticing it. Like I was like, wow. I mean, he really makes it sound like it looks, and it's even. Yeah. I mean, is it all the reverb? It's a combination of everything, obviously, but like there is a lot of reverb on those things. It's pretty badass.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite sounds for sure.
Yeah. So, man, with all of these influences and all of these different places that you're going, I view you as like a socially conscious pop rock artist. Is that a fair assessment? It sounds really blocky. It doesn't sound very appealing. Should find a way to poeticize that a little bit.
Genre's tricky. Like right now my music is getting, the record that I just made is getting marketed as alternative, indie alternative. But I mean, in terms of the way I think of myself, I just think of myself as somebody who really likes music. And I don't, kind of like you said, I don't really have a lot of bias or prejudices about like what is okay and what's like, what has artistic merit and what doesn't, in terms of like whole genre traditions or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, rock is definitely what got me into performing music. And I definitely would say I have like a pop sensibility when it comes to songwriting. I like writing catchy melodies that are memorable and hooky and all that. So yeah.
Yeah. As I'd said before, we've talked a couple of times, and a lot of it has been focused on how you are a self-sustained artist. And at this point, like, you're directing your own videos. I saw someone did was the director of photography. I guess someone that was looking through the lens because you're on the camera as well. But you did the video for Jim Crow where you're playing in the club. You directed that.
Yeah. That was a really complex one.
Yeah, it was. How do you do those things? Like, do you storyboard them out and go like traditionally like a...
I can't really draw, so I don't really do storyboards. What I did do though, we went to the space, and I kind of just walked around it, got it in my head good, and then went through the song, literally second by second, planning where in the building we would be, and writing detailed notes about it. because for those who haven't seen it, it's basically a one take video.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it too, there's actually a tempo change where everything goes to slow motion. So it was really tricky to do in one take. But then on the day, basically anytime you don't see me on camera, I'm running behind the camera, like yelling directions. And then when the camera's coming back to where I'm supposed to be, I run back in the other direction, grab the guitar, and then start pretending to play again. So it was really stressful, really fulfilling in the way that it is when you pull off something that's tough, you know?
Yeah. How did you do the one with the lyric video? Did you shot that one yourself too? And did you redid the song?
Yeah. So the lyric video, a friend of mine, frequent collaborator who is the Ari Morales, who is the director of photography on that. He has this motorized like slider rig, and so we went through and programmed like a 3.5 minute route for the camera to go, where it would like turn here, turn there, zoom out, pull, all that stuff. And then I think there were 5 of me in the video, so I just sat at a different spot in the set and played. I recorded the guitar and vocal first, and then played along to myself and on all the rest of the takes. And then you have, at the end of it, you have a full recording and a full band video.
How are you able to hear the other tracks while they're playing?
I either had in-ears. I think I had in-ears. If I didn't have in-ears, then there was a little speaker beside the camera as well that was playing that. It was tricky, but doable.
I mean, yeah. So if you messed up anything on a take, you had to go back and start over because it's one take all the way through.
Yeah.
Playing wise and stuff.
Yeah.
Were you able, I think of you as like some superhero musician, but some guys, I could still see fucking up during doing that, even somebody like Prince or something would.
Yeah. I think I had to redo a couple of them, I think, but it was mostly pretty straightforward. I end up, because I recorded everything by myself, I end up having to, I'm obviously writing all the parts. I end up having to play them a lot. Yeah. To record them, and then end up having to play them a lot as I'm preparing for shows. So by the time we did that, I had it down. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw at the, I had a long talk with Max Frost. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Before he played at the, at that Love and Light Stream show.
Yeah.
And I know that when you do your solo shows, do you play to some tracks and you also loop some stuff live? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a combination of a number of different things. So I'm triggering everything live. Some stuff is like some stuff is like a pre-sequenced MIDI passage or something like that I'll trigger when I want the guitar to come in or whatever, or excuse me, the keys to come in if I'm playing guitar or whatever. Some stuff I'll loop. And then some stuff is pre-recorded that I'll either trigger using a sampler or trigger at the start of the song or whatever. But mostly I try to hide that stuff. I don't like people to be paying attention to the fact that I'm looping and all that.
Like in a way that Max,
that's kind of like,
right. Max is open. Like, hey, I'm doing this. He runs to a drum and he runs to a bass and he runs, okay. Like, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Sometimes I do some of that and like make it really obvious what I'm doing. But a lot of times I like to hide it because I want the focus to be elsewhere. Like in my shows, I obviously have, it's not obvious if you haven't seen them, but I program a light show that goes along with my show, and there's video and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of a big spectacle, and there are other things I want people to be paying attention to,
Right. Yeah. I see that as, and Max is fucking incredible, and he's playing big shows with huge people. The one thing about it was, the one thing that I think about is don't you get lonely? Like, I love being in a band, and I love the air being pushed behind me. Like, I love I love the bass and the drums are pushing. Like, but that's just kind of how I was raised. Do you get lonely up there?
Yeah, for sure. I stumbled into this. I didn't set out to be a solo artist. I had a band, and then there was just kind of a freak circumstance that ended up. My drummer, we were a duo at the time, and he got hurt, and I just had to do the tour, and so I had to come up with the show, and I came up with this one-man show, and then, people really responded to it, and it took everything to a different level. So I kind of stumbled into it, and the way I feel about it is there are things that you can do on a stage with a band that you just can't do alone. But the converse of that is there are things that you can do on a stage alone that you just can't do with a band. Yeah. And so I really love both of them. I'm fortunate in that when I'm touring, or in the past, up until the pandemic, when I was touring with my wife, and she was my tour manager and sound engineer. So it was just the two of us in a minivan, and that was my band. And that's a really nice experience. As much as I miss having a band, I don't miss touring with a bunch of guys versus going on a road trip with my wife. I'd much rather go on a road trip with my wife. But I definitely, if I have my way, I'll definitely play with a band again for sure.
Yeah. By the way, that song "Mate," I assume, was written for her.
Yes.
It's a beautiful song, man.
Thank you.
Really beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. So my other question about that is technological failure, because the other thing that I talked to Max about was like, what do you do when everything goes wrong, man, and all those people are there? The first song at that Love and Lightstream thing, he had to switch out computers. Yeah. Man. And so, I mean, I'm not laughing at him. I was just like, shit. That's what I'm scared of with that stuff.
Yeah. I basically, any way that you can imagine. Yeah. Any way that you can imagine technology failing you.
It will.
And embarrassing you in front of a bunch of people. It will, and has for me in particular. Like every possible way that it can be like just a nightmare on stage. I've experienced that. And it's terrible. But the thing that it does do, because I've kind of leaned heavily on that stuff, or rather incorporated it deeply into my art from day one. And it is a lot more reliable now than it was even just like 5 years ago. So the way that I've approached it and the way that I've kind of covered my ass, as you say, is one, just, I got my start playing an acoustic guitar in coffee shops, and like, if I'm stuck with just the guitar and me on a stage, I can still put on a show. Right. Like, I don't need the rest of that stuff. I use it because I like it, and I'm doing a particular kind of thing, but I can do it without it. So that's the biggest thing. Just being ready to play on a piano or on a guitar or whatever, and be able to put on a show. But aside from that, my background, before I did music full time, I did web development and computer programming. So I have a background in computers, and so my setup is just really, really super robust. So like, I have 2 computers on stage with me at all times, and there are like 5 buttons around the stage where if one of them goes down, I just press a button, and it switches to the other one that's running everything exactly the same way. I've done it probably half a dozen times, and nobody could tell you when it happened. But I can tell you exactly when it happened, because it was like, oh no, everything's about to fail, and we switch, and it's seamless. So just lots of practice, and then just staying on top of the technology, like knowing where the vulnerabilities are and all that.
Do you tour with the sound man?
My wife runs my sound.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sound lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sound person.
Right.
Well, that's that answers a lot of my questions.
Yeah, it's deeply integrated into my setup on stage. So like I have a custom keyboard controller that I built, and I can mix the show from there too as well if I need to. I can mix my in-ears from the stage. Everything is super tightly integrated. We bring our own mixer to every show, and I just give 3 outputs to the venue.
Right. How tough is it for you then to do a situation like a South by Southwest, like 8 bands and a thing?
It is a lot of cardio. It's a lot of lifting heavy stuff repeatedly, quickly. It's not pleasant. It's really unpleasant, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it to know my sound is going to be on point every single time. Because you know this, every musician who's been on more than a couple stages knows that the person who mixes your show has your life in their hands.
Yeah.
And so having somebody who not only has lots of experience mixing me, but also cares about me and like doesn't want me to go down in flames, like that's super important.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's I work with Austin Music Foundation and stuff. You meet a lot of young bands and stuff, and you'll say to them like, "Oh, you should get a sound person before you get a publicist," and they're like, "Oh, why would I?" Nothing against publicists, but it's like, it doesn't occur to some people, like you spend all this time creating this sound, and then you go to some dude or woman that has never heard it.
Right.
And you put it in their hands. Maybe you do a 20, 30-minute sound check. They don't get you. They don't know what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Right. 100%. I agree 100%. I'm obsessive about the details. So all that stuff really matters to me. And like having somebody you can have a relationship with who not only knows what your songs all are supposed to sound like, but also kind of, like you said, understands you as an artist. And so if they do have to improvise and make some decisions on the fly, they like have a concept of who you are as an artist to inform those decisions, Right. That's super important.
Does she come from a background of sound or recording or? Wow, that's awesome.
No, she studied social work in school. But when we started dating and we're touring together, I was just like, "You're smart. Like, you can do this. I'll teach you what you need to know, and we'll figure it out." And so it was just kind of jumping in the deep end. I think like probably 6 months after she, like from 0 to 6 months, she mixed me at ACL.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
So just like right into the deep end, and it sounded great.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
One more thing about working alone is that you have been this self-contained and self-sustained artist, and then you went and mixed a couple of tunes with Jimino. What how did that come about, and what does he bring to the sound?
Yeah, I had known Jim for years, and he was somebody I would just ask for advice and stuff, because obviously, like anything I'm seeing, he's seen, because he's been on the scene for so long, and Spoon has been so successful, and he's been so successful as a producer and mixer as well over at Public Hi-Fi. So for those two, this is my first release on a label. And so it's the first release where I actually had money before I started making the record. Yeah. So I knew those two were going to be the first 2 singles. And I just wanted to have another pair of ears, because, I've just done everything so guerrilla style my entire career. Like, even now, like I said, I'm sitting literally in the seat where I make all my records, and I'm just in the middle of my living room at home. So everything is very DIY, and it can just be nice to have, somebody who has made records that you love and is working in a room that is like high quality. Just take a pass at it. Yeah. Over there and sat with him, and we mixed it, and it was really nice, actually. he definitely brought his taste and his ears and his experience to it. But I would say more than that, it was just like kind of validating, if that makes sense, where like, it's like, oh no, these do sound good over here. Like they sound just as good in here as they did in my living room. So like, I'm good. I can do this, that sort of thing.
That's great. Do you have any outboard gear? Or
I have on the record, I've gotten rid of it since, but I had an outboard preamp. I have some outboard preamps now, and the main mic that I use is a tube mic. So I've got the power supply for that, and then I've got just a couple little weird things like guitar pedals and stuff that I use, but it's mostly in the box for me.
Yeah. Do you have any? Do you hear any difference ever between those in the box and out of the box?
So I have really good hearing, and I listen to music all the time, and to my ear, the difference is it's the difference of like a feedback thing, and by that I mean like, it feels different to turn a knob, like to turn a physical knob, and for that to change the sound. And there's a certain kind of relationship that you can have with that. And I think that's just important to some people, and that's real. Like that's a real thing, and it's nothing to sneeze at. But for other people, and a lot of time this is me, like I can get that just as much on my keyboard and with my mouse.
Right.
It's just a different kind of interface.
Right.
I think the thing that analog really gives you that you have to work harder for working in the box is it's easy. Accidents happen easier when you're working analog.
Yeah.
And a lot of the beauty in art comes from accidents, things that you didn't intend to happen.
Yeah.
And when you're working in the box, you really have to be planful and intentional about creating circumstances that aren't entirely in your control so that accidents can happen.
Right.
And I think that is the thing that a lot of completely in the box recordings are missing.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with just them being in the box. I think it's more like the ways that you interact with it.
Right. Right. To me, I miss in the box. I mean, obviously, I came up like 4-track cassette was new when I got one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just kind of become available to kids that were teenagers that could save up enough money for it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And there's something about like I've been working on these tunes with this guy, and he's got a couple things there, but it's mostly in the box, and it's all amazing stuff. But there are things that I remember, like the change a snare drum sound to take the output of that snare, just the snare, through an Auratone mic or speaker, and setting it on top of another snare.
Yeah.
With the weight and then mic in the bottom. Like just doing that, just the act of doing those things to me is so adventurous. I mean,
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say you've got to introduce, because I do stuff like that too in my recordings all the time. I think
it sounds like you do.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you want them to have that kind of vibrance and like living human quality, I think you do have to. I think you have to move air around some.
Yeah.
Like it can't all be, ones and zeros. So yeah, I think it just comes down to like how much are you willing to put into it? Right. And I think you have to put a little bit more into it to get that magic out of it if you're working in the box.
Right.
Yeah.
You
kind of have to go out of your way a little more.
Yeah. Well, dude. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is your record's on Last Gang Records, and you signed that deal the night before we spoke the last time, right? Remember at Native
true?
Hostel? I think I remember that was the thing. Like you were like, "Oh yeah, I just signed this record deal last night," and we talked about it a bit on stage there.
Yeah. That would have been right around the same time. Yeah, I think it was like a night or two before. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Congratulations on all that. Congratulations
I forgot about that day. I'm actually producing a record for somebody I met that day.
Oh,
right now.
Really? Who is that?
Yeah. Kaylin. She was in the audience and she asked a question. And And like now, 2 years later or a year and a half later, I'm producing some songs for her, and they're incredible.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was a cool day.
Do you do that with a lot of other artists?
Yeah, I produce other people a fair bit. I'm working on 3 albums for other people right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, you do so much shit, Mobley. Like, seriously.
Try to keep busy.
Yeah. And I mean, your directing skills are incredible. Your recording skills are incredible. Your songwriting skills are incredible. Your fucking musician skills are incredible. You are a phenomenal singer.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just, I don't know. Sorry, I don't want to blow a bunch of smoke up your ass, but you're just a fucking super talented guy. And it's more than that these songs on this EP have a voice speaking to what's happening in society and the wrongs that are happening to people. And they're wrapped in a danceable, like sing-alongable package, which is genius. You know, that's the best way to get people to take their medicine with a spoonful of sugar, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this record drops February 19th. This podcast will drop a couple days before, and that tour, your virtual tour, starts February 25th, and people can go to mobleywho.com and find out all about it, because there's all kinds of packages. There's like there's merch bundles, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. People should head over and check it out.
Yeah, and definitely listen to the EP. This is incredible, and yeah, I think the world of you. I'm very honored to get to talk to you, and I tell people you're my friend. Don't get mad if I do that.
Thank you, man. Likewise.
Yeah,
likewise.
Man. Well, thank you so much for doing the show again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
James Grohl, come and tell me what you know. James Grohl, you're a devil in a daydream. James Grohl, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now.
Always great getting to sit down and chat with my friend Mobley. Pick up his EP, Young and Dying in the Oxygen Supreme. It's out now wherever it is that you stream or download your jams. And check out his Devil in Your Daydream virtual tour coming up, starting tomorrow. It starts tomorrow here in Austin. So go to mobleywho.com for tickets and find out how you watch it and everything. And check out Mobley anyway. He's got amazing videos. He's got amazing music. And I love this EP. Okay? I want to thank Mobley for doing the show again. And once again, go to mobleywho.com for all of your Mobley needs. And don't forget, when you're out there checking out mobleywho.com, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever it is that you find podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, all the places. Always dropping shows. I don't know if it's 3 shows a week, 2 shows a week, or 5 shows a week at this time, but if you subscribe, you will be notified when a new show drops. All right? Thank you for tuning in. Let's hear the rest of this beautiful song, James Crow, from my friend Mobley. Let's get down.
The world on a dead man's life, the kind that won't